I'm Prue Leith.
And I'm Paul Hollywood, and we're here to answer your baking questions that you've sent in from Twitter. This is Baking Support.
First up, Blue Starsky. I can't believe I didn't know about this. What are you looking for when you knock on the bread? Do you know?
If you look at that, I'm not sure whether you can, it's a baguette, but if I get the bottom,
Yeah, it sounds hollow.
it's hollow. Hollow means it's got air inside. If it's got air inside, it's more open. If it's open, it's a good bread.
Colleen. Why is my pie crust always soggy?
It's a grain, listen.
What have you got?
It's a proper American pie.
You mean it's red?
Oh, dear. If you get a soggy crust, it comes down to the liquid that's inside, so you need to evaporate some of that liquid out, or don't put as much liquid inside. If you've got apples, cook out your apples slightly to evaporate some of that liquid. So by the time you've got your topping on, it doesn't soak into the middle and end up with just a hideous soggy
That's quite dense.
I've never seen anything
delicious.
like that. Wow.
Or you know another trick, if you're putting a wet mixture in like stewed apples or plums or something, is if you put a bit of semolina, a thin layer of semolina or polenta in the bottom, it'll soak up some of the juices and it makes a tremendous difference.
And also vent it, so vent your pastry so it allows that steam to
He
come out
means
as well.
make a hole in the top.
Make a hole
That's
in the
a
top,
vent.
yeah. Do you think the Americans will know what venting is?
Well, it could be hyperventing.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Put a hole in the top. Honestly, it'll be fine.
From Truly, croissant. How do they get so flaky?
But it's all about lamination. So it's about chilling the dough and the butter each time you do a fold. So you need to do turns of butter and dough and butter and dough. So you start off with basically a piece of dough, butter covering 2/3 of it, fold that over so you end up with dough, butter, dough, butter, dough. You then put that in the fridge, chill down the butter again so it goes hard, roll that out, fold it again, and that's called a turn. You need to do that at least 3 times. Every time you fold it, it breaks the butter up, so it looks like a marble by the time you've finished it. And you need to roll it down to about 5 millimeters, and then cut them into triangles, roll them up, and there you have a beautiful croissant. You know, I've got a croissant here, and let's have a look at this inside. It's nice and flaky.
Yeah.
And there
There's
you
the
see it.
lamination.
There's the lamination and the flake.
It means layers and layers. But the fact is, you need to read a recipe about how puff pastry is made, and then you will understand.
Faye.
My cookies are never gooey. They always go flat and hard and spread way too much on the tray. What's the secret?
The mix is probably far, far too wet. If it's floating that much, you need a little bit more flour in there just to bring the mixture together. And a good little secret is, when you're doing cookies, make a little indent when it's on the tray and pop a little bit of chocolate in the middle and then just seal it up. But with that extra bit of chocolate on the inside, when you break it open, the
get
gooiness
melted.
of the chocolate will just fall out and it's delicious. We've got a cookie here.
I would say that's not a good cookie.
I don't think it's a good cookie, and I'll tell you for why. It's bone dry. And I could tell that as soon as I lifted it up.
This one had the opposite problem of what Faye is concerned about, because they didn't spread enough.
That's awful though, isn't it?
It's so sad because I thought the most reliable American bake is a chocolate chip cookie. They're always delicious.
That's terrible.
And this one ain't. Phrase, yeah? My caramel cheesecake burst and created cracks in the surface. What could have caused this?
Mixture's too dry. It's far too dry. The oven's too hot.
Or, if this is a cheesecake, you know, if you take it out of a very hot oven into a cool kitchen, it'll often crack.
If it's overdone, what you can do when you bring it out of the oven, rather than putting it on the side of the bench, place the whole thing on a cool surface like the floor. And what often happens is, rather than collapsing in on itself, it'll naturally find its actual level and level off again. So rather than putting it on the side where this heat rising from the floor, put it on the floor gently and then leave it to cool.
Augusta sparkles.
Yeah.
What is parchment paper made out of?
Silicon. Next question.
This is Robin. Can you fix a dough that has too much flour?
Yes, you can. Now, if you've got a lump of dough that's quite stiff and you think, what have I done wrong? You've added too much flour by mistake. Add a little bit of water. Or if you add too much, it'll just mix and there'll be water all everywhere. A little bit of water at a time. Take your time mixing it. Take it, it goes to a sticky stage, and then it begins to go inside. Once it goes inside again, and it's cleared the bowl, a little bit more water, and then stop the machine, touch it and feel it so it's nice and soft.
Yeah.
So yes, you can.
Aisha?
Yeah.
Why is my cake cratering in the middle. I used to be so good at makings.
Sometimes when things are too hot, you scald the outside, and then as it begins to carry on baking, you bring it out, or you're opening the door, the middle bit will collapse in. So it comes down to the temperature. Make sure you're attaining the right temperature.
Chef Phil, what baking tool could you not live without?
The Scotch scraper. For me, it was always like it's the chef's knife. It's like a wooden handle or plastic handle with a blade, a rectangular metal just to scrape down a bench and cut up dough and lift up pastry.
Bug Tarot. Why is my cake so wrinkly? It looks like an elephant's foot.
It comes down to the temperature. It looks like it's been blistered and it's a little bit too high in temperature, so drop the temperature and you'll be fine.
Mia Nona, she says, please don't call me a monster, but what is the point of unsalted butter in baking unless you need to consume less sodium?
Most of our recipes are actually unsalted butter because then you can control the amount of butter going in the recipe. If you put unsalted butter in, you're still controlling the amount of salt in that recipe. And that's the only reason, really.
And you know what the trick is? Is to keep tasting it. I mean, I taste all raw mixtures, all doughs, all everything in the mixing state, because that's when you can tell how much salt there is. You're not a monster, you're a clever woman. M. Dizzy.
The Great British Baking Show would be like, the babka is a bit stodgy, innit? And I pretend like I know what they mean. Stodgy is something that's slightly gooey, but slightly stiff, with a bit of gluteless quality to it.
Not good. From Dawn Bennett. Baking Twitter, I need your help. Blackened bananas, nay or yay for banana bread?
Yes, absolutely, because the flavour is all there.
And shall I tell you one amazing trick with blackened bananas? Is you cut the two ends off, just the tips, leaving the skin, liquidize it in yogurt with a bit of cinnamon and a bit of sugar if you must. It is absolutely delicious. Bit of ice cream there makes it a smoothie.
I bet that's not very nice. You'll find that your local grocers, if they've got some really black bananas, they'll probably end up really giving it to you for nothing because they're about to throw it away anyway. So go to your local grocer, and if you go and see anything, say, what are you going to throw those out? I'll take them. And you end up with a very low costing banana bread. Hagyogyu. I'm so confused. How do cupcakes know when to stop rising? It depends on the amount of rising agent you put in. So there's a limit. So if you put lots and lots of baking, it'll just pour and pour and pour. If you put a set amount in, which is the point in writing a recipe, then it will stop at a certain point, and that's basically all it is.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about the cupcakes. They'll worry about when they'll stop rising. From Lefty Lucy. Yeast is alive? Yes, it is. And if it's dead, it won't work.
If it's dead, it won't work, yeah.
Because what it's doing is breeding and giving off gas, which fills up the dough, and that makes the dough rise. Young Tax Evasion, that's a good name. How do you make the dough sour?
Sourdough's been around for around 4,500 years. The ancient Egyptians invented it. You need to harness lactobacillus, which is the airborne bacteria, by mixing flour and water, leaving it to rise for a few days, throwing half out, feeding it with more water and flour, leaving it for a couple of days, it'll begin to bubble. Every day you need to throw a little bit away and feed it.
So it takes a week to make your starter?
At least 10 days to 2 weeks to make a very solid starter. Once you've fed it, after a couple of weeks, it should bubble within 8 hours. That tells you can use it. And you use that in your mixture with your flour and your salt, instead of using the yeast that you buy in the shops.
This is from Muffdog7. Okay, are scones supposed to be dry and hard? Why is anyone choosing to eat dry, hard pastries?
The secret with a good scone is not to overbake it. So you want plenty of liquid. It's quite a wet mixture. And once you cut it and you put it in the oven, you glaze a little bit of egg on the top. You bake it. I normally bake it at 200 or 400 for exactly 15 minutes, and you'll be spot on every time.
This is Trisha, because we can't say your handle. What is the difference between baking powder and baking soda?
Well, baking powder has baking soda in it, but also has packing agents in there as well. So a baking soda will react with an acid and alkali to create bubbles, carbon dioxide, which will create the growth. If any moisture gets into baking powder, it's sort of protected, whereas baking soda, it's extreme, it'll just react. And away it goes. So baking powder's the way forward.
This is from Nicola. When making cupcakes, can you substitute oil for melted butter?
The thing is with cupcakes, you can use butter or oil. Oil will give you more of a glisten and a shine and a softness to your cupcakes, but there's no reason why you couldn't, no, not at all. And play with the oil types as well. Use a flavoured oil to give something a little bit more of a kick. Gouda-cris.
Why is it so hard to find comprehensive, thorough directions on how to whip eggs to stiff peaks on the internet?
Just don't add your sugar until right at the end. You get your stiff peaks, and then start adding your sugar slowly, and you'll end up with a beautiful meringue.
Sherry Silva, what are some common mistakes you make when baking, and what trips you up every time you bake? My most common mistake is I forget the damn things in the oven and
you burn it. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make in the tent as well is they forget some ingredients. So if you've got your recipe book in front of you, just go through each one, either put something underneath it and take each line and weigh it up and double check and put it in the mixer as you go. Then you know you're not going to miss something out of the recipe. Missing something out of the recipe is a very, very common mistake.
Yes, it is. Let's just say Matthew McGuckin.
Yeah, I think that works.
What does proofing dough even mean?
Proofing dough basically means putting air in bread, leaving it to rise, letting the yeast do its work.
From Van Weezer. Every time I try to make dough, it cooks out too dense. What am I doing wrong?
Well, first of all, cooks, wrong word. Bakes is the answer. With baking, if it's too dense, you've either A, not got enough water in there so the dough itself was too dense before you even proved it, or B, chances are you haven't proved it long enough. And it's a good indication to tell you that the yeast is at its full expanse.
Mostly it's got to double in volume, hasn't it?
Yeah, it will bounce back and you know when it's going in the oven because you touch it, it springs back.
And then don't undercook it because...
Bake it. Oh, Prue, you're letting me down.
Don't underbake it because if you do, the middle will be a bit soggy anyway, and then when it gets cold, that'll get dense.
Is put it in a tin. So there's only one way for that dough to go, and it's straight up, and then it opens up the texture inside the loaf, and then you bake it. It's dead easy.
Yes, Ted Roth. Hand mixer versus stand mixer. Which is a better option? Hand mixers are really better for tiny quantities.
Yeah.
If you can afford it, buy a good stand mixer.
Either way, but to be honest, a stand mixer is more versatile for what you need.
Wreck-It Raven. What's the secret to good buttercream? Why can't I ever make it right?
Just mix it properly. Use, I think you've got a confectioner's sugar over here. With butter. Done. Put a bit of colour or flavour in there with a bit of lemon zest.
Well, that's all the questions. Hope you enjoyed it. We did.
Yeah. And if you've got any more questions, send them through and we'll answer them in the very near future. Bye-bye.